Hello, everybody. So I'm 𝑻𝒉𝒆. I'm a registered nurse, and I'm obsessed with taking care of my body and loving myself and eating what food feeds me great. And I've found this amazing woman on Instagram. Her name is Georgiou. She's all the way from Australia. She's a psychologist. She's a public speaker, an influencer, a published author. She has this incredible book called The Food Jail, Breaking the Bars of Binge Eating. We did an interview and it was incredible. It's super informative. She's gone through a lot of struggles with her own personal journey and learned a lot through also her education. And now she's written this book and helps people break through those bars and live their best lives. So it's absolutely so incredible to have that kind of resource. And that's something I've struggled with as well. So you guys need to check out that interview. That is definitely an amazing interview. That's more focused on food. Today, we're focusing more on exercise. The world's been a little bit crazy. I'm in Canada. She's in Australia. We're both going through similar but different things. There's been a lot of stress. So that's a global issue for sure. Whether we've got our own personal life stress, but on top of it, we're in a global pandemic. So we've got more stress than typical. We all know that exercise is amazing for us. Sometimes we don't have that motivation, or sometimes we're too stressed, or we get into bad habits and we just don't do it. But it's an amazing and important part of self-care, not only eating well, but moving your body. And it's really good for your aging and stuff. So I see Stephanie online all the time doing these amazing workouts, and she's eating everything she wants to eat, and she's just like living her best life. And I think that's so important. And she's inspired and motivated me. I have a little like gym set up in my basement that I need a little bit more motivation to use, not gonna lie. But I just know when I work out, I feel so much better. And I know that there's a chemical thing going on in my head, because there's a lot of science, and Steph can definitely speak to that a bit more than I can, because she's the psychologist and the expert. I just wanted to really collaborate with Steph and educate you guys about how amazing exercise is for you and some different tips and tricks. Yeah, she's an amazing wealth of information. So she's Food Steph on Instagram. She's not just all about just the food. She's about everything health, right? So taking care of yourself, moving your body. And I love watching what you do. You've really motivated me. And I feel like I've really dove into my self-care in the last year. And I definitely needed to, because it's been a trying time. So thank you so much. And I'm grateful for seeing all your tips along the way. So I would love to hear what you have to say today about exercise and the benefits, and give us some tips. That would be amazing.
Yes. Well, thank you for the warm welcome. I can't believe how much time has passed since our last interview, and nothing much has happened, just a bit of a pandemic, but that's okay. I mean, it gives us lots to talk about, and you've highlighted so many key things that have been happening over the past 2 years. As you mentioned, everyone, you can find me online, Food Steph. I love to give really valuable information just off sort of the back of what's going on, because I think it's so important that we address our psychology on these topics, because as mentioned by 𝑸leAura, knowing what to do is one thing, but implementation is another thing. Everyone knows how to be more healthy. Everyone knows that exercise is good for them, but why aren't we putting these things into practice is the biggest question. And I think if you're watching this live right now, reflect on what it is for you that stops you from doing the thing you want to be doing, because the want is one thing, but again, how do we bridge that gap between what we want and what we're actually doing? We saw a rise in binge eating to manage our emotional state, the rise of binge drinking, alcohol, drugs, whatever it was. So remember, it all comes down to a need, and people will meet those needs in positive ways or in negative ways. And I think during COVID, not having many ways to meet our needs, we went down that path of binge eating or drinking or drugs or staying home because we didn't have much choice. I think the first thing to recognize, give yourself permission to feel what the past 2 years has done to you. Give yourself permission to know that it hasn't been a good 2 years. Give yourself permission to recognize that, yeah, maybe you have let go of your exercise. Maybe your eating has been at its all-time low. And I want you to give yourself permission and forgiveness, because as mentioned, it's a vicious cycle, and the cycle starts with a trigger. And usually the trigger could be not going to the gym, Could be a negative thought around feeling fat. So I want you to all give yourself permission around feeling what has actually happened, because we've all been in a state of fight or flight. You've all heard that term. It's a way we cope with anxiety. It's a way we cope with stress. And when we're in a state of fight or flight, our emotions can be put on hold because all we're trying to do is survive. In the past 2 years, we've all been in survival mode. So now that that survival mode is coming to an end, we can experience what is called a delayed emotional onset. So you may be experiencing all the emotions now that it's, coming to an end, hopefully. And I just want you to give yourself permission to feel that. I'm going to draw the cycle that the Keto Queen mentioned so you can better understand, because awareness precedes change. And when we're aware of our cycle, we can empower ourselves to change it. So what I want to teach everyone here is just something about your brain, first of all. So this is your brain, just so you can better understand what is going on here. In the brain, there are 2 types of anxiety and stress. So the first type of anxiety and stress happens at the back of the brain. Now, this is called feeling or body anxiety, and this is determined by our flight or fight response. This happens when your heart is beating, you may be sweating, you may be having heart palpitations. The second type of anxiety is called thought-based anxiety, and this sounds like this. What if this happens? I'm not going to be able to do that. I'm a failure. I can't do anything good enough. There's something wrong with me. So thought anxiety happens here in your frontal lobe at the front of your brain. Now, these 2 types of stress are important because they can trigger each other off. Your physical symptoms can trigger your thought symptoms, and your thought symptoms can trigger your physical symptoms. Now, the reason I'm explaining this is because it's going to all come back to exercise and movement. Because here is the most important thing you have to take from this. You cannot outthink anxiety when it is physical in nature. So if you're experiencing stress in your body, if you're experiencing shakiness in your adrenals, in your breathing, in your bodily sensations, you can't outthink it. So when you're feeling overwhelmed and people say, hey, just calm down, you just want to say, hey, can I punch you in the head? Because you can't actually calm down. So what I want people to know is when you're feeling physically overwhelmed and physically stressed, the first thing you have to do is use a physical strategy. Now, what's a physical strategy? Anything that involves physical movement, eating, taking drugs, drinking. So just because it's physical, it doesn't mean it's necessarily beneficial or helpful. But for anyone who's been emotionally eating, for anyone who's engaged in behavior they're not that happy with, it's not your fault. This is why. Your fight or flight is trying to find anything physical to calm your nervous system. So what we're going to do together is suggest some useful physical strategies. So the first physical strategy, obviously, is breathing. I love to say breathing first because your breathing is always with you. Whether you're driving, whether you're having a panic attack, whether you're at the gym, you can always access your breath. And what you want to do is when you breathe, a lot of people breathe incorrectly. So when people breathe, they breathe up and down from their esophagus, and that actually promotes panic. That promotes hyperventilating. That promotes shallowness of breath. Instead, what you want to do is you want to breathe from your diaphragm. So when you inhale, you want to push your belly out. When you exhale, you want to allow your belly to come in. So if you're watching this now, everyone, and ElleAura, join me. When we inhale, we want to push our belly out. When we exhale, we want to let it fall. And one more time, inhale and push out. And exhale and let it go. And practice doing this every single day. You see, the issue is people just do breathing techniques when they're in crises or they're in panic, and they forget how to do it because they haven't practiced. So just like exercise, just like breathing, we want to do it every day to try bring our baseline anxiety down, because there's something that happens when we breathe, and it's the same thing that happens when we exercise. So the second physical strategy to overcome overwhelm is exercise, or I like to call it movement. I find exercise can sound like such a drag. Do you agree? Do you sometimes think of exercise, and what goes through your mind?
Well, I'm not one of those people that is like, ooh, let's go to the gym, let's work out. Like some people are like addicted to like that good feeling, and I'm not really there yet. So when I hear the word exercise, I'm like, oh, hard work, getting smelly, sweaty, like maybe having like some neck pain after. I'm just like, but movement, I like that word. It's just like even just right, and it's so good for you. So I use the word movement too. I like that.
Yes, yes. And it's interesting that you said, I'll get there and I'll get to that. But the thing is, you don't have to. You can own feeling yuck when you think of exercise. You can say, you know what? Exercise gives me the heebie-jeebies, but that's okay. I can restructure that. I can own that and do it anyway. I can call it movement. I could call it 10 minutes of movement a day. The research has shown that 7 minutes of movement increases your well-being and your happiness. And it doesn't have to be strenuous. It doesn't have to be a hectic gym exercise. And if you're someone watching this and you've really struggled to get back into it, set yourself such a basic goal, like 5 minutes of movement. That's it. Because what that actually does is it gives you a sense of accomplishment and momentum. And when your brain senses accomplishment and momentum, it's going to repeat the behavior. The reward repeat cycle. It's kind of like classical conditioning. If a dog does a trick, you give it a treat. It's like us. If I exercise for 5 minutes, I'm going to feel rewarded and I'm going to repeat the behavior. Whereas what people do is they set themselves this massive thing. Oh, I need to exercise for 45 minutes. I need to go to the gym. I need to do that. Then when they don't do that, they feel guilty. And then because they feel guilty, they'll eat crap and they'll get stuck in the cycle. So the first thing to take from this diagram, everyone, is manage your physical state first through doing something physical. Breathing, movement. It could be cleaning. It could be dancing. It could be jumping up and down. Just get out of your body to get out of your head.
I love that you bring up dancing. I saw one of your videos on your Instagram and you're like, why am I always in a good mood? Because I'm always dancing around the house. And like something so simple, I call it dancercise. Like you're literally moving your body. It's good for you. And you just feel happier after. Like, how can you be frowning after having a little dance with yourself, even if you're by yourself, right?
Dancercise. I love that. And there's actually magic in that, because when you dance and you put music on, music increases dopamine and serotonin and all the feel-good stuff. Because when you're in a stressed state, your cortisol and your adrenaline is high. Adrenaline, or your adrenal glands, they respond to fight or flight. And if we're always feeling stressed out, they can get burnt out. So adrenal health is about nourishing your adrenals and not overdoing it. Like you said, we can get obsessive with exercise, or we can go on. It's a spectrum. So it's about saying, where am I? What's my ideal exercise? That's not going to affect me emotionally and physically. So remember, when you're in a high stress state, we want to get that cortisol and that adrenaline out of our body. Now, when you listen to music, your dopamine gets increased and your serotonin. Now, dopamine and serotonin brings down a cortisol and it brings down adrenaline. So music biochemically alters your brain. So music brings those good feelings, and then dancing and moving moves that adrenaline in a way that's productive, because we can move that adrenaline to the fridge and eat. We can move that adrenaline to music. So it's about picking which movement you're going to do that is in line with your goals and in line with your values. So that's the whole first part of exercise and stress, is using physical movement to get out of that stress state. So if you feel like you're very anxious, if you feel overwhelmed, try to manage your stress state through physical activity. Now, the second part of it all is thought-based anxiety or stress. Now, this happens in the front of the brain, and this can stop us from exercising. So thoughts like, oh, it's too cold. The way to overcome that is by working on the thoughts that hold you back. So your thoughts around exercise, do a bit of a reflection. If you're watching this, say to myself, when I think of moving my body, what comes up for me? It's too cold. I'm tired. I'll go tomorrow. I don't know. What thoughts come up for you, 𝑸leAura? If you're going to a bit of an unhelpful state, what do your thoughts tell you?
Yeah, you can make so many excuses. Like with me having my neck injury, I'd say, oh, well, oh, I might like hurt myself and get headaches, or I might like do the wrong movement and then I'm going to pay for it later. But then I think about it and I'm like, actually, I need to be strong because I have a couple whiplash injuries back to back. I had a couple different accidents and now I'm weak, and you don't want to be weak. And we all know that we need to have that muscle also for our health and our aging and so many other reasons. So I'm like, okay, I really got to stop with the excuses, but it's just kind of my pattern. So I have that pattern of making those excuses. But what I like is sometimes just challenging yourself, like 7 minutes a day. That's so simple. Or just like even a couple times a week, like just make a step. You don't have to go from like not working out to being like at the gym for 2 hours. Like you have to give yourself some grace, right? Because you can't just flip over a new leaf completely. Some people maybe can, but it's hard to make a new habit. And then you might get discouraged and feel like you failed, right? So I think also reminding myself why I'm working out is not just because of a physical look, because then I make the excuse too. Oh, I'm happy with my body. Like I like how I look. I don't need to work out. But then I think, oh, it's good for the happy hormones. Oh, it's good for my health and well-being. And as I age, and there's a lot of science also about how we lose a lot of muscle as we age. And as elderly people, they fall down. My grandma broke her hip at the beginning of the pandemic. It was very stressful for me. She's well and fine, but still, she didn't have like a workout thing, and she went through like the war and had some malnourishment and stuff. But if we do what we can now to take care of our health in terms of exercise and strengthening and eating healthy and nourishing our body, we're going to age better and live more independent later. So I always just tell myself, okay, I just got to do it. Like as much as I'm like, oh, I don't need to, because I've gone so long. I used to work out regularly, maybe in university, because I had a friend that did it, but that was like 9 years ago. So I've been in this pattern of, oh, I don't really want to for a while, but.
And you get to that age where you're like, where's the line between self-caring and then not doing enough that I know is good for me? And as we said, knowing is not enough. Knowing that something is good for you is not enough. How do we go from knowing to implementation? And the key here is change your thoughts, which you've actually been doing without realizing. You say, oh, you know, I need to go. It's good for my injury, whatever it is. But before we get to that, everyone, is you've got to recognize, what am I telling myself when I'm in a vulnerable state? What am I telling myself when I feel anxious? What am I telling myself when I feel stressed? What am I telling myself when I'm not going to the gym? So the first thing to do, remember, is awareness precedes change. So when I'm feeling a strong emotion, regret, guilt, anxiety, depression, stress, write down, what am I thinking? What am I thinking? So you can write it down like this. Here's a really good tip, everyone. So get a pen if you don't have one. We're going to learn our ABCs today. So A stands for activating events. So this is a strategy, everyone, you can start to do. Activating events to help you change your thoughts, because what people don't realize is it's not actually the situation that's making you upset. It's not the fact you're not going to the gym. It's not the fact you're eating donuts. It's not the fact you aren't socializing. Yes, all those things contribute to your feelings, but there's a process that happens in the middle. So the process in the middle is the B, which is your beliefs or your thoughts. So just going back, so everything starts with an activating event. Now, an activating event is a trigger. So it sounds like for you, 𝑸leAura, a trigger for you might be thinking about your neck injury, because that triggers me to think I might hurt myself. I'll exercise tomorrow. It's not worth it for me. I'm fine with who I am as a person. I like my body. But everyone, you've got to identify, what is the trigger? Like, what is the event that triggered an unhealthy emotion? What is the situation? What was the thought? So an activating event, and I'll give an example. So let's do an example. An activating event for a lot of people might be eating something they consider unhealthy, right? So eating something like a donut. For a lot of people, that's a trigger, because what that might trigger for them is, oh, I can't stick to anything. I didn't even work out. I'm a failure when it comes to food. I'll never lose weight. I have no willpower. So this is an example of how eating a donut can trigger a set of beliefs. And then that leads us to the C here, which is the consequence. So the consequence is, how do I feel? Consequence. My feelings, how do I feel as a result for all this? So the person who ate the donut, they might be feeling upset, guilty, anxious. Just to the D, or the behavior. What did I do about it? Now, for a lot of people, they will self-sabotage and binge. Oh, I ate a donut. I might as well eat the whole box. I'll start tomorrow. You know what? I feel so bloated and gross. I'm not going to work out. I might binge watch Netflix or something like that. So the reason I'm drawing this up, ElleAura, is it's not that simple to be like, oh, I should be going to the gym. I'm going to exercise. You've got to understand your cycle. You've got to understand your beliefs. People think situations cause feelings. People think it's the donut making me depressed. It's the fact I'm not exercising that's making me down. Yes, situations do contribute. But what psychology teaches us is it's actually your beliefs about A that lead to C. So you have to change your B's. And I have an ABC sheet you can put on your page, you can give to everyone so they can start to understand, what's my stress blueprint? When I feel upset, when I feel down, what's my ABC? Because understanding your ABC then empowers you to change it. And exactly what you said, where do we start to change it? See, because people try to change the C, the D, or the A. They're like, you know what? I'm never going to eat a donut again. But then we know restriction leads to binge. So what you need to know, everyone, is don't change the situation. Don't change your feelings. Don't change your behavior. Let's work on understanding our thoughts. Because if you change your thoughts, everything changes. Imagine another person that eats why is it some people can eat one donut and stop? Because their thoughts about donuts are different. See, ElleAura, both of us got stuck in diet culture and diet mentality that you should eat clean all the time. You shouldn't have these foods. The media teaches you this, social media. Oh my God, like, don't have a donut, have a clean version, which is fine and healthy and great. But when you do have a regular donut, you're going to not be prepared for it. So like you said, the first thing you want to do is reframe. I love that you use that word. So let's reframe our beliefs around whatever it is that's bothering you. So if you're watching this, it may be exercise that's bothering you. It may be eating certain foods that's bothering you. Pick your thing and let's reframe the language. For example, someone might eat a donut and think, this donut tastes yum. I like donuts. I can have donuts at any time. And by having that permissive language, by giving yourself that freedom, you don't think you're doing something wrong. You don't think you're doing something so secretive. And when you're free and you're emotionally free, you're not going to engage in this secretive, restrictive, binging behavior.
Just make little steps towards.
Yeah, people rush into, I got to change the habit. I got to change the food. I got to change the exercise. Don't rush into that. Take time to actually understand what your blueprint is when it comes to stress, anxiety, because we can't change what we don't acknowledge. So once you've done that work and you're like, oh, for me, it's the guilt I feel because I have an elliptical, I should be, using it and I'm not. The second thing is come from a place of self-compassion, which is exactly what you did. There is so much research into self-compassion. People who use self-compassion as opposed to punitive discussion. So people who are punitive may say, you should be doing better. You should be exercising. You're never going to lose weight. They actually don't get results. Research has shown that self-compassion gives you more results than poking yourself with a stick. So saying to yourself, you know what? Yeah, I bought the elliptical and I haven't used it as much as I can, but that's okay. I'll do 2 minutes and then I'm going to chill and watch Netflix. So like we said, make the goal impossible to not achieve. It was like when I wrote my book, I was working full time. I was so busy. I had so much going on. I set the bar so low. I said, Steph, 15 minutes a day. Write a heading if you need to. Set the bar so low that it is impossible to not achieve it, because that creates the reward, which creates the repetition. Remember, reward, repetition. See, but people try to motivate themselves through punishment and being punitive. You don't get a donut because you didn't work out. But instead, set the bar super low, reward yourself, then the behavior will repeat itself.
I feel like that 7-minute thing would be a great place to start. So 7 minutes a day can make you so much happier. And what more do we need in life? Like, honestly, I think that's the whole point of living, is happiness, not how good you'll look in comparison to whoever, happiness. So if I don't do my 30-minute workout, I can do 7 minutes. And I've done it a few times where I'm like, well, I didn't do that, but I could take a couple minutes and do some squats while I listen to some music or a podcast. And I found that setting that bar lower helped me accomplish things. And I was still doing something. I was still forming a habit, and I was still feeling proud of myself. But now that I know 7 minutes, literally, I will just jump on the elliptical for 7 minutes. I feel like that's a great solution.
I love that. And then when you're in it and you start listening to music and you're like, oh, I'm going to go to 10 minutes. And, sometimes you got to be really strict and say, no, stick to setting your bar low. Motivation comes from momentum, and momentum means doing the thing you want to do at the lowest ultimate standard. That's going to lead to motivation. See, people wait for motivation first, but it's momentum leads to motivation. I promise you, it's not about the goal. It's about the system you put in place. And 7 minutes a day, that's 49 minutes a week. Imagine if you applied that to other areas of your life. So remember, everyone, it's progress over perfection, and it's the system you have in place, not the goal, that's important. It's if you can wake up every day and say, am I making a step towards the ultimate me? Don't worry about building the wall. Ask yourself, am I laying a brick today to build that wall?
It's not the goal, because not only is it not the goal to go do the workout, but why are you doing the workout, right? Some people go to the gym for like a week and they're crushing consistency. And then they're like, where are my abs? Where's the weight loss? Where's my goal within the goal? And then they're like, well, this is a bunch of crap. I'm not going to do that. I feel like a failure. And then you can spiral out that way too. And remember, you're doing it for your health and your happiness. It's not to get shredded and compare yourself to someone else and have some big guns or whatever. You're doing it for you and your health and your happiness. So like, stay off the scale. Don't go to the gym or go do your workout for the wrong reasons per se. Like, don't beat yourself up if you do have a vain reason. Like, that's okay. But just make sure you're happy and you're protecting yourself and protecting your heart. Because sometimes we're like, oh yeah, I want to lose weight for my wedding or weight for whatever. And that's okay too. But just love yourself and give yourself time and patience.
Look at the behaviors you've implemented in your life. Don't focus on the weight. Who cares whether it's 2 kilos or not? What does that mean on the scale? Weight loss doesn't mean fat loss. Weight loss doesn't mean muscle gain. It's such a subjective measure. But then because people are putting their idea of success in the scale, they give up very quickly. Whereas like you said, ElleAura, what is it that exercise is giving me? What have I added to my life? People are just focused on what's the weight I'm losing, but what does movement give you? Happiness, routine, structure, discipline. Like, stop focusing on what you're not seeing and focusing on what is it adding to your life, psychologically, mentally, emotionally. Your brain will think of a million reasons why you shouldn't do something. And remember, your brain is designed to survive, not to thrive. But we listen to our brain because we think it cares, but it doesn't care about you. Your brain just cares about survival. So remember, humans were driven by 2 things, pleasure and pain. And often your brain will think of the pain. It'll say, oh, but it's cold, but I'm tired. I want to stay in bed. Or when we're overwhelmed, like, oh, I don't want to work out. It's going to be bad. It's going to be adrenaline and our cortisol goes up. So remember, adrenaline and cortisol, stress hormones. When you're high in adrenaline and cortisol, it leads to lots of things that can impact you. So when you're higher in cortisol, you're going to crave foods that give you energy, like sugar, carbs, all of that. There's nothing wrong with that, but you don't need it. Your brain's making up a story in its head that's not necessarily the truth. So adrenaline and cortisol, they're the stress hormones. The only way to bring adrenaline and cortisol down is by bringing your dopamine and your serotonin up. Your dopamine, serotonin, they're your feel-good hormones. How do you get dopamine and serotonin? You move your body. Movement biochemically gives you an advantage. And I'm not sure what time of the day you like to work out. I know you're a nurse and you've got like lots of going on, and it's different for everyone. I personally love to exercise in the morning because for a lot of people, their cortisol and adrenaline is high in the morning. As soon as you wake up, like, oh, I've got to do this, I got to do that, I've got to, my to-do list. So your adrenaline and cortisol is high. So if you move first thing in the morning, you bring that adrenaline and cortisol down. And if you're more leveled from the morning, you're going to make better food choices throughout the day. Whereas when you're high in adrenaline and cortisol, you're in your fight or flight. And when you're in fight or flight, guess what happens? That diagram of the brain, your frontal lobe shuts off. So if you're in fight or flight, nothing can drag you away from unhealthy choices. So remember, when I'm in adrenaline and cortisol, my brain's not working, it shuts off because it doesn't need to work. When you're in adrenaline and cortisol, when you're in fight or flight, it's survival. That's it. It doesn't care. It doesn't care whether or not your goal is, not to eat certain foods. It doesn't care whether your goal is to go to the gym. It's like, we just need to fight this. And it's very body-based. Decrease your cortisol, decrease your adrenaline by boosting your dopamine, boosting your serotonin. How do we boost it? Music, mood, movement, getting into your body, because getting into your body gets you out of your head.
Yeah. And cortisol and having a high amount of cortisol in your body leads to inflammation. It can lead to a ton of different physical health issues. It's bad for your heart. Like decreasing that cortisol is so important. And I feel like sometimes we get so used to living in that high intense stress state that we don't really know any different. And that's not living. Like you don't want to feel like that all the time. So if you are feeling stressed, like please do something to make yourself feel better, whether it's movement or talking to like a psychologist like Stephanie. I think that is so important, and working on like gratitude and your mental health. And it's so important.
Yes, it helps to bring us out of that chronic cortisol flight or fight, because we've been in fight or fight for 2 years, and we need to regulate. We need to learn how to re-regulate our emotions. And I know your community is very health-based. Your community is very into fitness. I just want to address the people who may be on the other end of the spectrum. So remember, too much of something is not a good thing. Too much exercise, too much strict eating, there is too much of that. And if you're over exercising, you're going to burn your adrenals out. Your cortisol is going to be high. And the same with food. Be kind to yourself. You cannot diet 24/7. You cannot be in a restrictive state. I mean, you can, but at what cost? It'll always come at a cost. So I just want to remind you, see where you are on the spectrum. Ask yourself, what does balance look like for me? What is my happy medium? And start to put in measures to get that, because everyone's different. Remember, it's your own blueprint that's important. It's individual, it's subjective.
This reminds me of, I think you said maybe this is something you had to overcome. Maybe I read this in your book. Some people work out so much because they're like, I ate this, I need to negative out those calories and like work out. I used to go to university with a girl who would work out for like 3 hours and just be like counting those calories, and it wasn't a healthy thing. And that's stressful. That's going to increase the cortisol. If you're stressed and you're just pushing yourself and like running, like there is some strategy to working out, and you don't want to leave the gym feeling like completely depleted, and you don't want to be going there for the wrong reasons and having an unhealthy mindset about it. Everything's about, like she said, balance. I've recently rebranded myself as keto-ish because I'm all about food flexibility. I'm not that all the time. I like to do what I want to do. I eat what I want to eat. I'm not tracking. I'm not obsessed. I'm just doing what works for me. And when I do that lower carb or low sugar lifestyle, my body feels better. So I intuitively am eating that most of the time. But then when I don't want to, I don't. And I don't mind. I'm not going to beat myself up about it, because I'm here to be happy. I'm not here to like follow some strict thing and fit inside of a box about what people say or what people think I should do all of the time or look a certain way. You just got to do what makes you happy. And food is medicine, right? It can feed you. It can be a treat and a happy thing. And you want to enjoy and love what you're eating. And I know if you guys look at Food Steph on Instagram, she eats all the most delicious things. I think I love to eat really delicious things too, but you're always eating such amazing stuff. And I feel like you work out too, and that gives you that balance, that food flexibility, and you feel good in your body and you have that balance. So you're not going back to that place where you were a long, long time ago. I think you said you had a battle of 9 years, right? And that was a while ago, but you've kind of have this habit, like what you do in your everyday in terms of how you eat and how you move your body and the practices of happiness and the self-care and the gratitude and all that bundled into one. It just protects you and keeps you safe and happy and gives you that balance.
And I love that you said that. I'm keto-ish because it's okay to have dietary preferences because they mentally feel good. That's okay. But when it comes to the cost of feeling guilty or having to stick to this, or you feel bad if you eat carbs, that's not useful, particularly. So I think it's fine to have dietary preferences. But I love that you said food flexibility. And the ultimate goal is food flexibility and food neutrality. I can eat Nutella for breakfast. I can eat Nutella for dinner. I can eat Nutella in front of other people. Whereas Nutella used to be this secret, pleasurable food I would eat in secret and be so extreme. But honestly, my body actually changed when my eating changed. And that was the most incredible thing. I'm like, oh my God, how is my body changing? How am I gaining muscle and I'm eating so much fat? I'm eating so much carbs. You have to change it up. You have to change it up. But it comes back down to here. You have to be willing to challenge your beliefs. Like I'm sure for you, you said I was keto-ish. I'm sure at a time, you felt quite restricted in whatever sort of diet or eating mentality, and you had to challenge your beliefs. You could be like, hey, I can eat bread and not wake up, obese and okay. I'm okay with life. You have to challenge those beliefs. So if you're listening today, ask yourself, what are my food beliefs? Is it carbs? Is it not eating after night? Is it having to fast? What are my food beliefs and how can I start to challenge them to make me realize I can be more food neutral and I can be more free when it comes to food?
Yeah, that's so important. And I like what you said in the last interview. It's in your book. Your weight isn't written on your tombstone, right? Like this isn't why we're here. The food is supposed to be a nice, fun thing. Enjoy it. Enjoy your workout. You don't have to be too strict and just live your best life. I'm so grateful for all the tips and information, and I'm going to definitely use these going forward. The 7 minutes a day. I think that's a key. I think that's an absolute key.
So I'll leave you with 2 things to take away from today. The first one is focus equals feeling. So when you're feeling man or down, ask yourself, what am I focusing on? Am I focusing on the fact I didn't exercise? Am I focusing on what I didn't do today? And change that focus. Focus on what you did do. Focus on what you did do well in your day, and your feelings will change. And the second thing I want to reach out to a community and say is, don't spend 80% of your life trying to be 20% skinnier. Yes, work on your goals, but work on your systems and your routine. Because I promise if you work on 7 minutes a day, that's going to be way more effective than 70 kilos or 70 pounds or whatever it is.
I love that. Thank you so much, Stephanie. And yeah, there's a bunch of comments on our live. People love you. There's a couple of people saying they loved your book and they can't wait to read it again. So I'd love to chat with you again at another date. So if anyone has any comments, questions, or wants to request some topics, please let us know by commenting. You can always reach out to Stephanie. She's got Food Steph on both Facebook and Instagram. And yeah, it's a pleasure as always, all the way across the world in Australia. Thank you so much for your time and all your tips and expertise. And
you're super, super, super welcome. And if you want to grab a copy of Food Jail, Breaking the Bars of Binge Eating, you can grab it on Amazon. Or if you want a signed copy, you can go to my website and For your community, I'd love to give them 20% off. So if you put MindFood20, you can get discount from my website. Yeah, enjoy. It's on Audible as well.
Awesome. And we'll put some links in the description. Definitely get that book, guys, and follow her. She's always got some great tips on her Instagram.
Herself